Hello and welcome to the YBMB Show. Those of you who follow know that we do this live 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. So welcome to Friday, which is our business day. Mondays we cover body and Wednesdays we cover mindset and Fridays is business, as I say. And sometimes I'm lucky enough to have a guest with me to talk on a particular subject. And today I'm delighted to introduce you to Peter Boulton, who is somewhere behind that photograph. There he is. Hi, Peter. Lovely to see you.
Hi, Angela. No, it's a privilege to be here. So it's great to be with you.
And thanks so much then for joining us. And particularly on a subject that I know many people are interested in at the moment. And that is about the pros and cons of working within a corporate versus being an entrepreneur and going it alone. I think particularly now where maybe people have been on furlough or even maybe they've lost their job or maybe even they've had a business that for whatever reason has come to a standstill. And at these particular points and others as well, people sort of wonder, what direction should I take? Should I start another business? Should I start a new business? Should I go get a job? Should I stay in my job? So I think that more than usual, people are asking those questions, and I'm so happy to have you on because I immediately thought when I'm thinking about the transition and who can really well describe the pros and cons, then Peter, you're a great example of that because, and I'll just fill in my perspective on our background of when we met and then maybe you can do the same. But from my perspective, I met you, Peter, when you were managing director, or I think you were head of sales and marketing, and then you were managing director of a very large company, American-owned company. It was a manufacturing company, in fact, and you were in charge of European divisions, etc. And we were recruiting for you. So this was back in my recruitment days when I had Middleton, and it was a straightforward recruiter. And you and I have kept in contact over the years because you have been extremely innovative and ahead of the curve in lots of things that you've done. You've worked, you've had sort of side hustles, you've worked in very, you've had very large and important jobs, you've been very entrepreneurial within a corporate, and then you've actually moved to sort of full-time entrepreneur. You've done daily emails for forever, it seems like, well before others did. So I think you've got so much to share. So thanks so much for coming on. And if we could start with just hearing a little bit about what you do now, and maybe then we'll sort of delve into your history. It's a long history, so I'll ask you some appropriate questions, I think. And at the end of this, for people watching, I want them to be a bit clearer on the pros and cons of entrepreneur versus job, or maybe both.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And there are advantages, of course, from both sides, aren't there? And I think it's important that people recognise those.
Yeah.
I mean, if I sort of start at the end of the journey rather than the beginning, because you say it's a long journey, quite frankly, and that might get a bit tedious for people to listen to the whole journey. So today, I mean, I run my own business as in digitally, online. I really focus on helping people to increase their income, their profits and their net worth. And there's a variety of ways that I can do that. But 4 of the main sectors that I now work in online are within digital marketing education, helping people to understand actually what is digital marketing and how can it drive new customers into a business.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say on that point that the word marketing, I think, is very misunderstood. And for me, I say marketing is the feature, but the benefit of good marketing is that it generates new customers for a business. And I think that's a really key point.
Yeah, definitely.
The second area is within nutritional products. I'm an affiliate for a company that represents nutritional products, which of course is very good for us because too many of us are eating too much junk these days and fast food, and we're not really looking after ourselves. Very much in line with YBMB, of course. I mean, our bodies are so critical to doing good business because if we don't fuel ourselves correctly, we're not really set up to do the best job that we can do.
No.
The third area really is in Forex, which is trading foreign currencies to make a profit. What's happened really within the last couple of years is that there is AI software being made available to the man on the street or the woman on the street, where you can use software to be able to trade without sitting in front of a screen all day long looking at charts and graphs and so on and so forth. And then the fourth area, which is very recent to me, is environmentally friendly cleaning products. We're all so aware of how much plastic is being thrown in our oceans. So I represent a company that uses aluminium rather than plastic for their packaging. And also the contents of the cleaning materials are not caustic, they are actually marine friendly. And of course, people then go, well, how does that clean properly then if it's not, chemicals and so on and so forth? So for me, my world is all about introducing people to opportunities that they can find the right opportunity, hopefully through me, to run their own business as an entrepreneur. And of course, quite a lot of people I'm talking to come out of a job to then work as a side hustle, really, to do something with me for a while until they get to the point that they're confident that that's what they want to continue doing.
Yeah.
So they don't have to jump out of employment and lose the security of a salary before they're ready to do so. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that has always stood out with about you, for me, Peter, is that you're very consistent and very diligent. And some of the things that you've mentioned, forex, etc., would be associated with, quick gains and sort of people sort of jumping in and making a quick buck. But I think the fact that someone like you is involved in these areas, it proves that with consistent, because I know you wouldn't be involved in something that doesn't sort of work. It proves that with consistent and diligent application, you can make these things work. And maybe at another time we can talk about some of that, because I think it's great to have new business ideas. But interestingly, I think what joins it all together for you, even though there's such diverse areas, is your skill levels in sales and marketing. And you picked these up originally when you were working in a corporate environment. So going back a little bit now, if you just explain sort of when we met what you were responsible for and what you were doing, and then maybe we'll talk about the transition.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when we first met, I was sales and marketing manager for the plastics manufacturing business, in charge of the European division of that business, American owned. The American part of the company was about 10 times the size of the division that I was the sales and marketing manager for. And I was very keen to try and learn more about marketing. What is this marketing magic, if you like? And I think actually, I may be wrong, but I think you and I met at a marketing event that was run by somebody else, where perhaps both you and I were looking for new ideas and thoughts on what marketing is. I'm not sure whether that's the case or not, but
yeah, I remember coming and being in your office, and you had a big telesales team to the side of you, I remember. And they were making calls overseas to Germany and places like that. I do remember that, but how I actually got there, I can't remember now. But yeah, but I remember being very, very impressed with the setup. So you quickly, well, I don't know if it was quick or not, but you did progress significantly within that business until you were MD of a much larger division, weren't you?
yeah, it was quite an interesting transition for me, because at the time I'd also started a bit of a side hustle, if you like, as you called it.
And it wasn't called side hustle then. You were you're ahead of the curve, because that's quite cool and trendy. People call it that now.
Yes.
But it wasn't called that, and you were doing that a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking, actually, I remember I went to the NEC, to the franchise show, to try and get some ideas of a business that I could start whilst I'm still in full-time employment as the sales and marketing manager for that company, which is probably a bit naughty, really, but hey, there we go.
And we'll come on to talk in a minute. You were doing a great job for that company, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And really, through the franchise show, we did come up with an idea of a security company. Long story cut short, we actually then, and I say we, my wife and I, decided to run it. I did all the what I call the back office stuff and the marketing, and my wife did front of sales so that she could go and talk to the prospects and the customers and discuss things with the engineers. But basically selling CCTV systems to small local businesses. That's really where we started. And the reality was that we pulled away from the franchise model at the last moment, thinking, well, why do we really need that existing brand of a franchise? Why don't we start our own brand? And that brand became In Time Security. And actually, In Time Security, which we then sold 3 years later for a very nice profit. And I then returned to becoming the managing director of the plastics manufacturing business, which is one of the reasons why we sold the company, because I felt, after being offered the opportunity to step in as managing director, because they had lost their existing managing director at that time for a variety of reasons, I thought, well, if I'm going to run this as managing director, I really ought to come clean. So I spoke to my boss, who was the president of the company, and said, look, I've got to be honest with you. I was going to be leaving the company because I set up a security business and that was going to be my future. But now that you've offered me this opportunity, I'd like to sell that security business and put my heart and soul into this business. And I knew that if he found out at some stage and felt my heart and soul wasn't in the business, then maybe I wouldn't have a long career as the managing director. So that's kind of how that really happened, and that transition into becoming the MD.
And I think that's a really great example of how it is really good to be completely clear about what your own goals are and not worry too much about what other people, how you may be judged, but to be clear about what your goals are. And then if you can see an alignment with the goals of yourself and your employer, then fabulous. As long as it's always working for both parties, and that's the way to go, really, isn't it? One of the things that I do remember from that time ago as well is that you started sending out daily emails. They were from In Time, and they were called Daily Ticklers, and they were motivational quotes. And I mean, we're talking years ago now, and we all of us get bombarded with daily emails now. But I still subscribe to yours because they're well thought through, carefully selected. It's a bit like reading the Daily Stoic. I don't know if you've ever read that book before by Ryan Holiday, but they're carefully selected quotes. And but you must have an enormous engaged database as a result of those. So you were doing that very, well ahead of the curve as well, I think.
Yes, I mean, I think for me, what happened is that through that transition from in-time security to then becoming managing director for the plastics business, at a later stage, I then thought I'd start another side hustle, as you do.
Yeah.
And that was In-Time Profit. So again, I was using kind of like the In-Time logo and name, which I had created, to think, well, In-Time Profit suggests to people that it's about making profit. And in fairness, it was like a consultancy to help people understand how they could develop and grow their businesses in a similar way that I'd learned to do that as the managing director of the plastics business. And it was within that I thought a little bit of relationship marketing, I think, can go a long way. So rather than just email marketing and other forms of marketing to try and sell the product or service, daily ticklers, as I called them, which are basically quotes from famous or well-known people, which are designed to be a little bit inspirational, a little bit motivational, just was a lovely part of my relationship marketing that I sent out. And I kind of got into the habit of doing it, and I still do it today. I don't send them out every day, I'll be honest. It's normally a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday, and that's scheduled at the weekend for the following week in exactly the same way, just to kind of help people to get to know, who is this Peter Boulton? And he seems to be like a decent sort of guy. He's consistent with his message and so on and so forth. So that's really how the Daily Tickler came about.
And I think as well, what this demonstrates is that you can be very entrepreneurial and still work for a company and have a big job with them, and also your entrepreneurial skills can really benefit that company. Because if we come back onto, once you became MD, I know you had a lot of success there, and you significantly increased both the bottom line and the top line, and you did some acquisitions as well. I mean, it was almost like it was your own business, the way you operated, which from an employer's perspective is really perfect. We call these people intrapreneur. So they've got an entrepreneurial mindset, but they're working within a business, and that's precisely what you were. And I always advise people to have that. It doesn't matter if you're not running it as your own business. I think you're so much more invaluable to an employer when you have that mindset. And that's what made you really successful within that business, I think, isn't it? Because no one could argue with your stats. I mean, they were amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I won't talk numbers today because maybe that's kind of confidential. But if I say in my first full year as managing director, we lost money. I lost the business money. And the American owners were looking at me as if to say, have we employed the right person to do this? I was half expecting my P45 to turn up in the post at some stage. But I was able then in the following year, tripled the profits from its previous year. And I don't say that to brag in any way, but what it gave me was the credibility that I could then pitch to the American owners for the second time, actually, that I wanted to acquire one of the company's competitors. And that nearly doubled the size of the business when we eventually sat down in 31st of March 2014 and signed the paperwork. We'd acquired a competitor, which just was such a great fit with the business. I say that nearly doubled the size of the business. And I then spent the next 2 years in what I call post-acquisitional activity. It's how do you get two companies, two cultures, two lots of suppliers, all to work together towards one common goal. Yeah. And when I sort of talk about it now, I'm thinking I did quite well, really.
You did, you did such a great job for them, and it just demonstrates as well that you can get your sort of entrepreneurial desires and sort of need for fulfillment and progress fulfilled within a corporate, as long as you're given carte blanche to do the things that you want to do, and there's a clear process, and you're given a certain amount of autonomy. And as I say, it needn't be one or the other. And I think that the thing that you were doing, which was your side hustle still, your in-time profit, it wasn't in competition, and you were able still to address both very successfully. But there comes a point, I think, because I had a 20-year corporate career myself as well. And, at the end of my 20th year, so I was 10 years with BP, from a young age then, 20 to 30, roughly speaking. And then I was 10 years for a bank, the Woolwich, which became Barclays. But I always remember at the end of my 20th year, I was reporting at board level, and I would have been sort of about 39. And I just remember looking at the chief exec one day at Barclays, his name was John Stewart at the time. And he just looked exhausted. He looked bored. And I was sitting at the board table, I was reporting something to him. And there was a moment where I just looked at him and I thought, I really don't want your job. And I also had a side hustle. And I know this sounds like a bit of a superficial thing, but I remember actually thinking, well, my car's actually the same as yours as well. We just happen to have the same car. So I was thinking, from a materialistic point of view, I didn't want it. And he seemed like he wasn't enjoying himself. And that was a real light bulb moment for me. And I also felt that I used to start these projects and be so enthusiastic and work all the hours that, needs to be worked. And then suddenly the project would stop and there'd be something else. And obviously, it was at board level, and I wasn't at board level, although I was reporting to board level. And I found it so frustrating that I couldn't push forward in the way that I wanted. And that was really, after 20 years, what was my catalyst. So what happened in your case? Because obviously you were doing the acquisitions and you were doing super well.
Yeah, I mean, really what happened, I had two shocks in one day, would be the honest way that I can remember it. My boss, who was the president of the company, would come over about every 3 months for about 3 days. And quite frankly, to a certain extent, we would pat each other on the back and say, aren't we doing well?
Yeah.
But on this particular time, which would have been August of 2018, I think it was, he came over. And one of the things I wanted to do was pitch the idea of then acquiring the next business. And it was a fairly significant acquisition. I'd done my homework. I'd found 3 different companies that were all open to discussion, let's say that. I had a favorite between those 3, which was actually 3 times the size of the company that I was then running. So this would have been a major acquisition. And before I even got to talk about the detail, I said, one of the things I'm now looking for is to be able to acquire the next company. And this was the shock, because he looked me in the eye and he said, I wouldn't consider doing any more acquisitions.
Right.
It's like, this is really strange. And I know the reasons why he said that, which was actually nothing to do with the division that I was running. It was more to do with the parent company. I won't go into detail because I think that's unfair and unprofessional. But I felt quite shocked that I couldn't now carry on doing the job that I could do. Growing organically within the business, to me, was very boring, quite frankly.
Well, it was almost like he'd given you a finish line in a way, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, where do I go from here, sort of thing?
Yeah.
And, the second shock was when I got home that evening and spoke to my wife about it. How was your day, love, and so on and so forth. And I said, da 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 da. And I said flippantly, I'm thinking of leaving the company. And the shock was when she said, it's about time. I said, what?
Yeah.
And I've been there a long time, because I'd been there as sales and marketing manager previously, and then took over as managing director for whatever that was, 5 years, I guess. I was MD of the company. And I said, well, why do you say that? And she said, you're bored. And I said, yeah, but I know another acquisition will make it challenging and interesting. And she said, but you've just told me that your boss has said no more acquisitions. And I said, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was then actually 3 months later that I left the business on very, very good terms. And I had already built a succession plan into the business, because the person that owned the business that we acquired became my number 2 as the commercial director in the new bigger company. And I spoke to him and said, look, if I disappear, would you be prepared to then take on managing directorship and then lead the business for the future? Which he agreed. And he was a great guy. He is a great guy, full stop. So I left the business in good hands to then be able to go on to do other things, including the things that I'm now doing. So, yeah.
And that is the definition of a good leaver. I always say to people when you're going to leave somewhere, because no one has a ball and chain around their ankle to stay somewhere forever and ever. And there always comes a time, like I say, when you're working for another business, all the time your goals are aligned. It's really great news. The minute that the goals become disaligned is really the time to either have a conversation and get them back, or else to part company. When you do part company, always part as a good leaver, is what I would say, because you never know when these people, you're going to meet them further down the line. You may want to collaborate with them, you know, unlike you want to go back and work for them again, but collaborations in the future. And, you know, as we know with our, with all the science keeping us alive for a long time, most of us are going to have many, many more years of our career in the future. So if you are thinking of leaving, then be a good leaver, even if that means 3 months notice, waiting till you've got someone to replace you, you know, and all of the rest of it, which is obviously exactly what you did. And then Peter, you know, you sort of started again in some fields, and you know, you've done that. Like I say, you've built up gradually. You were very careful about the niches that you selected. And tell us a bit more about that, and then we'll go on to pros and cons of either.
Yeah, no, that's easy. What kind of happened is I took some time out when I left the business, including a glorious holiday at Reed's Palace on Madeira, which is,
Nice.
they say, the world's best hotel. I don't know how you can claim that, because there's a lot of very nice hotels in the world. But that was also a catalyst when I received a phone call and an invitation to become the 4th founding partner of a business called Copper Bottom Investments. And Copper Bottom Investments basically work with businesses that are looking for investment to help develop and grow their businesses. And I thought, well, I've kind of proved my track record that I can start businesses, I can grow businesses, I can sell businesses, I can acquire businesses. So this sounded perfect, because I hadn't really thought about the investment side of things before. And the truth is that when we get invited in to see companies that are looking for investment, that investment really is twofold. It could be money, of course. I mean, that's always the conclusion we jump to when we talk about investment. It's cash, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the other type of investment really is the skills that the 4 of us could bring into a business. Not necessarily all 4 of us as partners work on every business that we work with. It could just be 1 of us or 2 of us sometimes. But that collective of 4 successful business leaders working together and being able to share ideas and thoughts and resources that help individually us help to develop and grow businesses can be very valuable. And the reality is that companies we go and see, very often we say, I'm sorry, we don't think you're investment ready for money, but if you want to hire us to work with you on a part-time basis, we can work with you to help you get investment ready, so you're attractive to an investor, rather than just looking like you're a company that is after some money to, you know, keep the wolf at the door, which is sometimes the case, of course. And
just as an aside on that one, Peter, in case people are listening and thinking, oh, you know, I'm in a startup mode, or are those businesses that you help in that particular organization, are they pre-revenue, or are they, you know, in their infancy with a growth plan, or established businesses? What's your target market there?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's kind of both. I mean, one of the latest ones that I've become a shareholder in is literally pre-revenue, pre-startup.
Right.
Another business that I'm a shareholder in has been running now for probably 6 or 7 years. And the reality was, I liked what I saw within the business when they reached out for investment.
Yeah.
The reality was they weren't investment ready. We did pitch it to a few people, and actually we found an investor who wanted to put twice the amount of money into that business than they were actually thinking they wanted. But when they realized they were going to lose control of the business because of the size of the investment, they decided not to go that route. I then personally invested in that company, and we've turned that business around. Even with pandemic and everything else going on, we're still turning it around, to be fair. We're not there yet, but moving it from a position of owned shops to a franchise model made complete sense, where our cash flow is stronger than it ever has been. The opportunity for people to buy a franchise and for us to be able to make a profit and reinvest that into the business to continue to grow the business is very exciting. So to answer your question, sometimes it can literally be pre-revenue, pre-startup, and on other occasions it could be companies that have been running for a while, which are looking to scale and grow and perhaps just need a little bit of help to do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, with the long history you've had a success in a lot of areas. You know, if we sort of all across the spectrum, really, ranging from starting your own business from scratch and selling it. So the the security business.
Yeah.
Being in a corporate, working your way up from manager to MD of a bigger division, doing acquisitions for the corporate, being a good leaver from a corporate, you know, then starting your own initiatives, investing in other businesses, and then the digital marketing side that you've built up as well. You've got such a range of experiences there. And so now I think would be the lovely time, having established all those credentials. What do you think are the pros and cons? If people are sitting there now thinking, should I stay with this company? You know, should I sort of go and start another business? Should I go and get a job? What do you think are the pros and cons of both? If we start with working for someone else, first of all, working in a corporate, what would you say pros and cons of staying there or staying in that sort of field?
Yeah, I think the immediate one that comes to mind, which I'm then going to call a lie, but the immediate thing is that you've got job security, you've got money coming in every month, and you know how to pay the mortgage or the rent or whatever else.
Yeah.
The reason I say it's a lie is because job security is really a thing of the past. And I don't think necessarily it matters how good you are.
No.
Because it's about the circumstances that the companies get themselves into, either through their own fault or through outside influences.
Yeah.
One of the biggest outside influences we've got at the moment, of course, is pandemic, COVID-19, and so on and so forth, where, yes, there are certain industries which are thriving. It's not all doom and gloom out there, but it has obviously and will continue to affect a lot of businesses. And those businesses then have to let people go when it's just not practical or fiscally viable to continue moving forward. So there's kind of the security of having a job and having a salary, but there's also, on the flip side, the potential that any of us could lose our jobs if we're employed by somebody else if things go wrong.
Absolutely. And anything else besides security in terms of opportunities, day-to-day activity, you know, anything else like that would...
I don't think so as a benefit. I mean, you know, some people, I think, feel the security and peace of mind of going to work, let's say 8 till 5 or 9 till 6 or whatever the hours might be. I think working in a bunch of people who are in a similar situation, that creates a community sometimes within a company, depending on how big or small the company is, of course. And I think a lot of people have a need to go to work to have community with people, not just about earning money. I think money is the result of what we get from what we do and the quality of what we do. But I think part of the motivation for us as social beings is we need to be around people. We like to feel cared for. We like to feel part of the gang sort of thing. So I think in an employment situation, that's one of the benefits that generally you would get within a company working for somebody else.
Yeah, very much so. And I think sometimes people don't realize how important that is to them until they haven't got it anymore. I mean, starting a business, running, although people have experienced it a bit more during the last year, obviously with lockdown, so people are probably a bit more aware of themselves and how they cope in certain situations. But switching over now to running your own business or starting your own business, pros and cons of that from your perspective, what do you think?
I think the main benefit of working for yourself is that you are your own boss. You know, you control actually how much effort, how much time, how much money maybe that you put into what you're trying to create. I think one of the things for people is that it's very easy to see the grass is greener on the other side. You know, that's an old sort of allergy, isn't it, really? But it's sort of thinking, oh, you know, that's how you can make a lot of money working for yourself. The truth is that a lot of people that work for themselves don't make a lot of money, but maybe they're happier in a way that they can control their own destiny. They feel secure in their own ability to manage themselves, and they don't then feel out of control, or rather controlled by an employer. So I think there's a level of independence and a level of security in looking after yourself rather than being beholden to an employer or somebody else. I think that's probably one of the key things. what I would say to me, entrepreneurship, I mean, I heard a definition of this some time ago now. An entrepreneur is someone that fixes people's problems for a profit. And I think it's very important to understand that it's actually the profit side of things, because you can't go on being an entrepreneur for very long if you're losing money. You've got to be making money.
Yeah.
But I think it's that ability to help other people solve their problems or their pains, as I sometimes call them, with a product or a service, which helps them to overcome that, as long as you can make a profit in return.
Yeah. And I think when you're, from my perspective, that's very true, that the more you get focused on your client and what it is that your client really wants and needs, and you come up with something that is unique in terms of not necessarily of the offer, but the way that you offer it, and that you try to over deliver, and you're doing a really good job. The more you focus on that, strangely, that's when you make money. That's when you make profit, because but if you don't focus on that and you start stressing about the money, which is hard not to, when it's not coming in, but the more you focus on internally on the money and the financial modeling and all of that, I found that's when you're less likely to do so well. But I do think that it takes a certain strength of mind. You can't really take your foot off the pedal so much, I think, when you're actually, especially if you're in startup mode. And if you're not careful and you don't keep yourself in check, then you can become, the boss from hell, but to yourself, because, you're paying yourself last, you're making that person work all hours, do all the jobs. And so I've certainly been through that as well. So I think when, I don't know if you've ever read the E-Myth, have you?
Yes.
Yeah, the E-Myth Revisited. And that describes this scenario really, really well. And what it says is, if you're going to start a business, well, I would say for sure, read that book and think about the structure that you're building. By all means, if you've decided that you're going to be just working for yourself and almost swapping one job for another, it's just that now you're your own boss, then that's fine, but do it consciously is all I would say. But I don't think the grass is really greener either side. I don't think it's as clear cut as that. I think it's very much a case of experiencing both and then drawing your own conclusions. But I do think it's worthwhile everybody experiencing both, even if they're doing it as a side hustle, as you've described. And there's many opportunities to do that, aren't there?
Yeah, and I think the key thing there is that if you are in a job and you feel fairly secure, but you feel restless and you want to do something else, there's plenty of opportunities, particularly within online businesses, which is one of the things I'm very much involved in, of course, that you can start your own side hustle. You don't have to tell your employer you're doing something else. You can try something and work it in the evenings and the weekends to find out if it's really what you want to do. And if not, you can kind of, there's a popular expression, pivot back the other way and actually say, I'm actually happier working for somebody, working for a boss within a structure and getting my money every month and knowing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's that ability to be able to step out and try something else and find out, to be fair, as I did originally with the security business, I was still working full time, for that plastics manufacturing company as the sales and marketing manager, but I was using evenings and weekends to think, how can I get something else going, which might well be my future, without actually leaving the security of that employment. Now, I'm not trying to help people be, to tell lies, if you like, but we've got to look after ourselves. Nobody is coming to save us. And I think that's a very important expression. It's about looking after ourselves. But I think the entrepreneurial spirit is also turning that word work, which is a negative word for so many people, into a positive. I don't start and finish work at 9 till 5 or anything else. I kind of work or live life, as I call it, 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'm often on emails and things in the evenings or at the weekends or taking calls and bits and pieces, because I enjoy helping other people achieve things for themselves. Sounds slightly selfish because I'm getting the enjoyment out of helping other people.
Yeah.
And the money just comes as a result of what I do.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I'm financially I'm not money motivated. I think it just doesn't sit with me for some reason. Money just comes as a result of serving other people and helping them. And if I can help other people be successful, I feel good. And it's that feeling that I kind of crave, I suppose. And if that sounds selfish, well, I'm sorry, but that's the way that it is.
Yeah, but that's a victory, isn't it? That's a victory each day when you know that you've really helped someone. Like I've had a WhatsApp this morning from someone who sort of talked about the fact that, you know, the program is something that she's had a light bulb moment. It's really changed things for her. That's not money. But that is just a recognition that, you know, we've really managed to make a difference. And there's just something about that. I mean, in fact, there is a sort of a science behind that, you know, that gives you a hormonal kick, like a happiness hormone surge when you feel that way, when you feel that you've done something for someone. So yeah, maybe it is a bit selfish, but it's a nice way of being selfish. So just to finish up, I think, Peter, people can get you at peterboulton.com, can't they?
Yep.
And if they are thinking about, you know, exploring this whole idea of a side hustle, exploring about alternative ways of starting businesses, earning new revenue streams, helping other people, and even if they've already got a job and they're just sort of putting some feelers out, I think that they really can't go wrong by contacting you and finding out a bit more about the opportunities that you have, and at the very least, subscribing and getting your daily emails, because they are always so motivational. And then just to finish off as well, to say that you know, you're following YBMB, those of you who've logged on today and you're watching today, if you want to take that a step further and start to work on, you know, this exterior, this one and only vehicle that we have, which we call our body and our brain, then you can find out a bit more about the program too. And you know, both myself and Peter would absolutely love to help you to take that next step and be a stronger, better, more financially successful, happier you. So with that, I think we can leave it there, Peter. Anything else to add?
No, I think you've put a lovely bow on the end of that call, to be honest, because that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about helping other people to achieve what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And I think it's helping those people that want it. There's a very old-fashioned expression which I heard many years ago that goes something along the lines of, you shouldn't want something for somebody else more than they want it for themselves. And I think we've got to find that spark inside ourselves. Say, if I want something, I'll find the people that can help me to achieve that. And that's really where the entrepreneurial journey, I think, starts. Yeah. It's not just about the individual, it's about the people that they reach out to, that they connect with, to be able to help them on that journey. And if I can help people, then clearly they can reach out to me and they can find me, as you say, www.peterboulton.com, and Boulton is spelled Boulton, just if you wanted to make a note of that. But yeah, okay. Angela, it's been a real pleasure to spend some time with you. So thank you.
You too, and congratulations on all your successes and achievements, and just, you know, keeping on being so inspirational all through pandemic. It's been really great to talk to you today. Thanks, Peter.
Take care.